Today we're going to be solving questions 22 and 23, and this is from the SAT number 9 reading section, and we're just going to go through it. There's a pretty good question here. It's a little bit challenging. It really just requires close attention to detail, so let's hop in and let's pretty much see what we can make of it. So first thing is it's a paired question, which means we have the two parts, part A and part B, and the best way to solve these is to start with the answer choices for 23. And we're just going to go through each one of these one by one, and we're going to see which one of these could answer 22. And then based on whatever those answers are, then we're going to go back and answer questions 22. So 22 says, in McKinnon's view, Ceres differs from other objects in the asteroid belt in which significant way? And here's where I want to start, just by highlighting the important thing. So obviously we need to find something, some reason why Ceres is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. The other detail to pay attention to is this part, which says, in McKinnon's view. So this is important because it's giving us a specific person or a specific perspective of a person who we need to find. So if we find an answer choice, we find a line that doesn't come from his perspective, then we can eliminate it because it has to be from his view. It's a minor thing, but honestly, a lot of problems, maybe not a lot, but a handful of problems require you to recognize these. They'll make your life easier, and I do think a couple of them are almost impossible to solve unless you understand this part here. So let's jump in. Let's start with lines 2 to 5, and we're looking for something from McKinnon's view for why Ceres is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. So here we see the dwarf planet Ceres and other icy chunks may have been born in the same realm as Pluto, but traveled all the way to the asteroid belt between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. So I think this is decent in the sense that it does tell us a reason why Ceres is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. Here's the problem, though. Nowhere here is it mentioned that this is a perspective from McKinnon. And in fact, McKinnon is not really mentioned until down here, right? Line 11. And it's really unlikely that McKinnon is going to be mentioned here and for this to be his perspective here. Things tend to fall in a pretty linear order. So if he's mentioned down here, it's not really likely that this is his quote. And if we read through, we find there's no evidence for that at all. So for that reason alone, we can get rid of A, which is going to help us out. So then we go to 8 through 9, which says at 950 kilometers in diameter, Ceres is by far the largest object in the asteroid belt. So this right here is a pretty clear statement of why Ceres is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. And even though it comes right before the exact mention of William McKinnon, there's a little bit of back reference because it says that's not the only reason it doesn't fit in with many of its companions, according to William McKinnon, right? So here it seems to be he also believes that Ceres is by far the largest object in the asteroid belt. So I think it's pretty good. I think it's from his perspective. We can make a fair case for that. And I think it's the largest object there. So I would keep B for now. Then we have C, which says 18 through 20. What's more, a dip in Ceres' light spectrum may be a sign of ammonium-rich clay at the surface. So this right here is kind of interesting. We want to sort of read in context here. This whole paragraph is about the different things that are the differences that Ceres has between it and other objects in the asteroid belt. And this seems to be one other indication of it. So I think it could be plausible, right? It's telling us we have ammonium-rich clay, which I'm going to assume is something that's different, right? So maybe it's plausible. Then we get D, lines 20 through 23, which I'm going to notice are actually come right after. And it's actually continuing the same thought as C. It says this material has never been found in the fragments of asteroids that have fallen to Earth, but fits the expected ammonia-rich composition of a TNL. So now I have to make a decision here because C and D are actually sort of talking about the same thing. It's basically talking about the fact that it has this ammonium-rich clay at the surface. So not both of them can be correct. So maybe they're both incorrect, but I'm thinking about if I have to choose between one of these, which one is more likely to be correct? And to be honest, I think D is more likely to be correct because here's how we can parse it. C basically just says, hey, when you look at the light spectrum, Ceres has more ammonium-rich clay, or it suggests that it has ammonium-rich clay at the surface, right? Which on its own is like, so what? It doesn't tell us why that's important. However, the next sentence here tells us pretty clearly that this is a material that's never been found in the fragments of asteroids. So this second sentence here tells us why this is different from other objects in the asteroid belt. So I actually think that D is better than C because it more explicitly tells us why Ceres is different from other objects. So maybe we can keep C in the running a little bit, but in between C and D, I'm going to give D the favorite, right? So now we're kind of stuck. I think we have B and then we have D, right, including maybe C, but basically B and D are our choices now. If you remember, B only says that Ceres is the largest object in the asteroid belt, whereas D basically says it has this ammonium-rich clay on the surface, which is something that's never been found in other asteroids. So either one of those could be our answer. Let's see if we can find something that will match that. So A says the surface temperature of Ceres is lower than the temperature of other objects. Here we have surface temperature, which is not mentioned at all either in the passage, and especially not in any of the text. So for that alone, we can get rid of A. Then we have B, which says the dimensions of Ceres have varied more over time than the dimensions of the other objects have, right? So this might seem plausible at first. Some students choose this because we're talking about the dimensions of Ceres, which maybe is talking about the size of it, right? The fact that it's the largest object in the asteroid belt. The problem, again, comes in the details, which says that the dimensions of Ceres have varied more, meaning they changed more over time, right? Not necessarily that they're the biggest dimensions, right? It's the largest object, but that they varied over time, which is really nothing that any of our texts talked about. So I'll give it a B. Then we have C, the surface composition is dissimilar to the composition of the other objects. And I think that this matches kind of this down here, right? The C or D round here, which talks about ammonium-rich clay at the surface, something that other asteroids don't have. So surface composition is dissimilar. I think this is a pretty good choice. I keep it. Then we have D, which says the light reflected by Ceres is more intense than the light reflected by the other objects. And the only point where light is mentioned is in this sentence here, which talks how we have a dip in Ceres light spectrum. To be honest, I'm not even sure exactly what that means, a dip in Ceres light spectrum. It shows you that I'm a reading specialist here, right? No science specialism. But basically what it's not telling us is that the light is reflected is more intense. That's for sure. A dip in the light spectrum is not saying that it's more intense. So for that reason, we can get rid of D, which leaves us with C. The surface composition is dissimilar to the composition of the other objects, which means B is out for 23. And which means it has to be either C or D. And like I said before, I think D more explicitly tells us why this is special to have the ammonium-rich clay, why this makes Ceres different from the other objects. So I get rid of C and choose answer choice D as our correct answer for 23.